Run on Less is an event by the North American Council for Freight Efficiency. This year's event will feature profiles of 10 different operations. This is my second video. If you haven't seen the Pepsi video, they run that semi. You know the one I'm talking about. In this video, we have a different fleet operator, different use case, different infrastructure, and different trucks. So I will be comparing and contrasting. Schneider National is a logistics company with a depot located in South El Monte, California. That facility deals with intermodal logistics. Those intermodal containers get moved interchangeably from rail to truck to warehouse and other combinations before being broken down and delivered locally to the shelves at a store near you. Let's look at their facility. A nice drone video of their depot. On the right, you can see 16 charging stations. I'll cover those in a second. On the left, they look like vertical fuel storage tanks. I'm not certain of that. Maybe it's a neighboring company. Would like to think that those were once full of diesel fuel, but not sure. If you happen to know, feel free to comment below. Let's get back to those chargers. As I said, there are 16 stations called dispensers. A closer look reveals that there are 2 cables on each simultaneously charging. So 16 times 2 allows them to charge 32 trucks at once. By September of this year, they plan to have 92 trucks in service from this facility. That's 3 trucks per charging cable port. I'll compare that to the last video of this series. Tesla had just over 5 trucks charging at each port, but they can get away with that because each charger is much more powerful and their trucks charge quicker. This location uses hardware from Power Electronics. There are basically 4 zones. Each zone starts with what they call their NB station cabinet. From their literature, that appears to have a maximum output of 1,440 kilowatts or 1.44 megawatts. That power gets distributed to 4 dispensers, each with 2 cables or ports it can simultaneously charge. Each dispenser is their liquid-cooled model. Liquid cooling allows more amps to flow through the cable and into the truck. Had they gone with a dispenser that is only air-cooled, it would have limited the maximum charging speed. Note that Power Electronics also offers a pantograph model. I've seen pictures of buses in Europe charging this way, either at a depot or in public where the bus has a scheduled break. I didn't know that it was called a pantograph, so I learned a new word today. Back to Schneider, I said that each dispenser has 2 cables, but they're not the same. One is liquid-cooled and rated to handle 500 amps. The other is air-cooled and only rated for 300 amps. To understand why they did this, we need to pull out a calculator. Each zone has up to 1,440 kilowatts. We cannot exceed that number. 1440 divided by 4 dispensers means that each station has a 360 kilowatt rating. They called it 350 kilowatts, close enough. The first truck to pull up grabs the liquid cool cable rated at 500 amps. That cable is capable of drawing the maximum amount of kilowatts. When a second truck pulls up next to it, it would have to grab the air-cooled cable rated at only 300 amps. The 2 trucks now have to share the energy output. That's why the second cable doesn't need to be liquid cool. You don't see this with public charging because people don't follow rules and they haven't been trained on which cable is right for their vehicle. So they try to make them all the same as possible to avoid conflict. This is a good lesson for those who own an EV. Always try to avoid parking next to another EV while it's charging. Depending on the site layout, it could cause your vehicles to share energy, reducing the speed to each of them. Now let's look at their trucks. Some background first. Daimler Trucks is no longer part of Mercedes-Benz. They've split into separate companies. Daimler Truck owns Freightliner, and they are the best-selling heavy-duty truck in North America. They also own Detroit Diesel, that makes the engines, but they've rebranded as just Detroit because they also make e-axles, where a huge electric motor gets mounted on the differential, allowing people like Freightliner to convert their very popular Cascadia Class 8 tractor to an eCascadia, which is what we have here. Traditional truck manufacturers know their customers well, and they know they want to configure their truck for the specific job to be done. The Freightliner eCascadia can be configured as a 4x2. That is a single rear axle. That model offers 2 different battery sizes. Schneider selected the 6x4 tandem configuration, where there are 2 axles at the rear. Both are being driven by Detroit E axles. This model comes only with the larger battery pack, good for up to 220 miles of range. By comparison to the Tesla Semi, this eCascadia can haul about the same, but it has half the battery and half the range. We don't know how the two compare in terms of price. The Freightliner charges slower because it runs on a lower voltage. There are different voltage levels by which an electric vehicle operates. Tesla says their Semi is a 1,000 volt architecture. More volts allow it to charge quicker. Volts times amps equals watts. The other cars and trucks out there are moving to 800 volt architectures. And I should say 800 volts is a nominal number. The exact voltage is somewhere in that general range. The Freightliner eCascadia is a more traditional 400 volt architecture. The overwhelming majority of electric vehicles on the road today, including all the Tesla cars currently, are 400 volts. Going back to the charging station, that 500 amp liquid cooled cable times 400 volts is a theoretical maximum of 200 kilowatts of energy. Freightliner says that if you're using one port, one plug, the maximum is actually 180 kilowatts, so about the same ballpark. You can see in the video that the second charging port is there, but it's blocked off. If that were open, you could put 2 cables or 2 plugs into the truck at the same time and get up to 270 kilowatts of charging. It's not clear if that second port is an option and these trucks didn't pay for that option, so they're blocked off, or if Schneider just doesn't want their drivers plugging in both plugs because that would tie up equipment and prevent another truck from charging next to it. Freightliner publishes claims about charging, but their chart is based on the maximum 270 kilowatts of charging using both ports. Schneider is only using one port, slower. Going back to the infrastructure, you can see that the charging equipment installed is actually more than what these trucks can handle right now. And that's a good thing. Freightliner and other truck companies are moving to faster charging trucks, so the infrastructure can handle it when those trucks come. These trucks are being used on routes that are 80 to 100 miles from the depot. During the interview, more than one person talked about how much they have learned from this, learning about the infrastructure, learning about the trucks, learning about the drivers. Schneider modified their schedule for drivers. Typically, each driver is assigned a specific truck, but with these new electric trucks, they're treated more interchangeably. Each driver gets told what truck to use based on the state of charge of the truck and the route they need to run. When they get back, they're told where to charge and what truck to jump into next. Fleet scheduling is hugely important to maximize the efficiency of their operations. I'll talk more about this in later videos, how connectivity and network software are being used to help take the guesswork out of these hyper-efficient operations. That's what I learned from Schneider and their electric Freightliner trucks. No, they don't have the crazy range of the Tesla Semi, but for what they need to do, they don't need it. I liked hearing from all the people about the learnings coming out of this. Transitioning from diesel to electricity won't be perfect the first time. We just need to avoid making the same mistake twice. Go to runonless.com to see the whole video. Hit that subscribe button so you can get the rest of this series in your YouTube feed. And as always, if you learned something from this, give it a like and thank you for watching.